Hey, what's up, everyone? Mike Lowe here, and this is episode 1 of our Timberwolves MyNBA. Let's jump right into the first game of the season action here, Phoenix at Minnesota. Late in the first here, T-Wolves down 8. Ricky Rubio is going to find Amari Spellman for the alley-oop. Ricky Rubio using his passing skills and Spellman bringing it home. Meanwhile, later in the first, D'Angelo Russell 2 points on the stop-and-go drive. Aaron Baines a huge block on Ricky Rubio. And that leads us into the end of the first half here with a couple more highlights. Chris Paul, of course, D'Angelo Russell, and we are looking at a pretty substantial lead here, 11-point lead for the Suns, 10 percentage points higher in field goal shooting percentage, and a 10-point rebounding edge for the Suns. Second half action starts off with a huge block by Karl-Anthony Towns, and speaking of Cat, check out this rookie play here by Anthony Edwards on the dish. Watch this here. Towns finishing. Beautiful pass. Speaking of Anthony Edwards, the first overall pick in the draft, driving and finishing. Of course, Anthony Edwards, first overall pick in the draft here, playing in his very first game, and you can see the athleticism showing there. Meanwhile, Josh Okogie hitting the three-pointer with the assist by Cat, bringing the Timberwolves a little bit closer at the end of the third quarter. And don't count the Timberwolves out. They are a good fourth quarter team, and they're going to start off the fourth trailing by 8 points. Timberwolves trailing by 6, and it's James Johnson off another assist by Karl-Anthony Towns to bring the lead down to just 3. Later, the Timberwolves lead by 5, and look at the finish by Anthony Edwards, taking it to the rim, showing his athleticism yet again. The Suns did a lot of double teaming of Karl-Anthony Towns in the second half, and we made him pay here, tying the game. D'Angelo Russell with 5 minutes left. Now we're under a minute to go here. Booker driving, spinning, driving again. Pulls up short, but look at the rebound by DeAndre Ayton, who was a dominant player for the Suns, leading the Suns to the 109-102 victory over the Timberwolves here in the first game of the season. Let's take a look at the players of the game for both teams, starting with the Suns. Devin Booker, 33 points, 7 assists. Chris Paul, 29 points, 9 assists. And DeAndre Ayton, 22 points and 18 rebounds, leading the way for the Suns here with the 109-102 victory. Meanwhile, for the Timberwolves, it was Karl-Anthony Towns, 35 points with 18 rebounds. D'Angelo Russell, 29 points and 5 assists. And the rookie Anthony Edwards made some nice plays today, brings home 12 points in 30 minutes played. Let's take a look at team stats, which I'll let you take a look at on your own. Well, there you have it. The Timberwolves start the season 0-1 after a 109-102 loss to the Suns. Welcome to episode 1 here of our MyNBA franchise play. This is on Next Gen, this is PS5, and I'm Mike Lowe. You can find me on Twitter at MikeLowe47, and if you enjoyed this video and others, please subscribe and give us a like. Also, if you have questions during any of this video here, please just go ahead and ask in the comment section, and I will get back to you with some answers, and I'll be trying to get to those each here as we move forward through this series. So this series here is, again, focused on the new updated MyNBA, which is a feature here on Next Gen with NBA 2K21, and really showcasing the beauty of this mode, because this is a mode that I grew up playing, just franchise mode in general for sports games. I'm not really into the Ultimate Team stuff myself. I'm not against it like some people. I understand the importance of it for the companies, but I just always enjoyed the team building aspect. It's the closest thing to the real life sports that we watch, and it's just something I've always enjoyed. And so that's kind of the focal point of this series, is going to be just kind of looking through the inner workings of this game and just kind of strategy here. It also helps me because, truthfully, basketball is probably the professional sport I know the least about. And so this is helping me to get reacquainted. The same way that video games helped me with many other sports, whether it was hockey and baseball and things like this. It's just another tool that you can use to really learn about a particular sport. So that's something I'm doing here. So I hope this series is helpful for people like me who are just kind of still learning the inner workings of the NBA, but also veterans of the series who may have questions or just want to see some things through a different lens, so to speak. So Real quick, just I've had some people ask about the settings I'm using and whether or not I'm doing sliders for this game. Potentially, I don't know if I'll do sliders. I've seen a couple things that could maybe use some tweaking, but I will let you guys know on that later on. I think Mike Wang and his team just do such a fantastic job of this game that it plays really, really well. And the difficulty settings themselves do a really good job of just kind of scaling things up and down for you. So as far as what I'm using here, pretty straightforward stuff. And so we are just on default All-Star. So you can see none of these changes are things that I've done. This is just default All-Star. It's playing really, really well. And that's my setting. And the other settings I'm using is, again, I just sort of have a setup where I'm playing as the GM. There's 1,001 little things that you can tweak in MyNBA, which is really cool because, again, if you don't know, this mode has taken my league and my GM and combined it into one. So you're going to see elements of both of those previous modes here, and they're all interchangeable. You can go through and adjust those, and I have other videos here on this channel that will kind of go over that a little more in detail. So if you're curious, check those out. But I'm going to assume you're aware of that, and I'll just say I'm not somebody who says you have to play the way I play. So that's why I'm not going to go through every last little detail of what I'm doing. You can set it up how you want, but just know there are some options out there, including if you wanted to, I mean, literally kind of jump into how I've started mine, is you can actually jump into these 2K share setups, and you could just search for my name, right? So if you were just to create a new franchise, you'd have to hit the search button here. You could type in Mike Lowe or whatever, and it's going to pop up, and it's going to show you these. I can't delete this one, so don't use this one, but use one of some updates, and that's exactly what I was using to get set up there. So again, that's just some basic setup. We looked at the box score here, just a really quick look around the league. And there's not a whole lot to look at, obviously. I mean, we're only a game or two in for most teams, but there have been a couple little things. So getting you caught up on the transactions there, you can see the Rockets have signed a few players here at the start. Of course, the firing is from when I took over with the Timberwolves here. And the Suns just recently signing Romeo Langford. So DeMarcus Cousins to the Rockets. And so, again, just a few transactions there. Why did I pick the Timberwolves? That's the question I get. I actually wrote an article about this on simsportsgaming.com. But the reason I took the Timberwolves, it's not because they had the first round pick, or it's not because they have sweet looking jerseys. It's because, to me, I try to find a team that would be the most realistic team to maybe kind of have like a late firing of their GM. They didn't fire them in real life. Perhaps the GM's deserving of it. They've been there a number of years, and they just haven't been very good. They've had that window, right? They've had at least a window, maybe 4 to 5 years or more to show improvement. And I'm looking at teams that didn't make the playoffs last year. I mean, this team won 19 games last year. The GM's been there for at least 4 or 5 years, and they just haven't been as good as they really should be. And they also didn't fire their GM, right? So to me, that kind of works out. And you might be saying, oh, well, why don't I just take a team that did fire a GM? And the reason I don't do that is because, well, the real life new GM has already made a bunch of transactions. So it would be like firing someone after they've been there for like a month, right? It's kind of a weird thing where you're kind of like this weird hybrid team where you have the previous GM's decisions and players on the roster, and then this real life new GM that you fired after a month or so. So that's the reason I go with that. Again, do what you want. That's just, I've had people ask how I choose a team, and that's how I did it. To me, I narrowed it down to the Knicks or the Timberwolves, and because I might end up doing sliders with this game, I wanted to make sure I had some top talent, such as Towns and Russell here, just to kind of give me a good look at how the game performs. If I was using the Knicks, for instance, I mean, they just don't have the same kind of roster. It sometimes can make it a little bit tricky when you're adjusting sliders. I like to make sure I have a top tier guy, which of course we do here in Karl Anthony Towns. And so that's my setup. Again, pretty straightforward stuff. And I should say that's a quick look around the league as far as transaction reports. And there's only one injury so far to discuss, and it's Killian Hayes, unfortunately out for the Pistons here. So the 7th round pick in the draft has a fractured left arm, just played, I think, 16 minutes or something like that Yeah, 16 minutes, and he's already hurt. So rough go for the Pistons. Speaking of the Pistons, and speaking of setups, why didn't I wait for the December roster? How come I'm just rolling with this? Because again, of all teams, right, the Pistons. The Pistons in real life have been doing some crazy things, right? Now this roster I'm using, this is the day after the draft. This is the official NBA 2K roster. I don't have every single transaction that you're going to see going up to opening day for the NBA, December 22nd, I think it is. And I'm okay with that. Here's why. The league's going to change. Everything's going to change. And if you want to get deep into some franchises and have some time to really get into this game, especially when it's new and fresh, you just got to get moving with things. It's never going to be perfect. And for me, a game's got about, especially a sport game, about a 12-month shelf life, if that. If you're going to waste an entire month of it waiting for some additional transactions to happen that are just going to probably get undone anyway because the AI is going to start doing its own thing, to me, that's a waste. Now, again, I'm not criticizing. I'm literally saying, for me, that's a waste. I just want to jump in and get moving. I want to get into some off seasons and start playing this game. So I'm not concerned that the Pistons or anyone else doesn't have every last little perfect transaction, because let me tell you something about sports games in life. It's never going to be perfect, right? So I'm not too worried about that. So we took a quick look around the league. I've talked a little bit in and out here about my, just kind of team setup and strategy. And again, I'll reiterate, if you have questions about any of that, I'm not going to spend 25 minutes talking about my, the settings I have. Just know that there's an abundance of different things you can do here, obviously. So if you have questions, you want to see something specific on a future episode, just let me know. But this is just this whole episode is just getting familiar kind of with the league and, kind of where I'm going with all of this. So speaking of injuries, though, Anthony Edwards, luckily not hurt, didn't play great in his first career game. See, his advanced metrics were pretty rough. But there's something that stood out to me a great deal when I looked at him, and it's that right knee. So a 19-year-old player, right, with this kind of injury already, or this kind of injury proneness, I guess you could say, is troublesome. And this, of course, goes back to his real-life injury, where he had an ACL reconstruction surgery. And again, we're looking, it's a similar issue with Derrick Rose, right? A really, really great young player who injuries, handicapped him a little bit. And so, Derrick Rose has never quite been the exact same player he was before his knee injuries. And so, I guess Anthony Edwards going to be the same thing here. I don't know. It's something I'm keeping an eye on in this series. I can tell you this: is Anthony Edwards an untouchable for me? No. And this screen here is probably the biggest reason why. Is that no, for a guy who's built around his athleticism and at 19 years old already has that significant of a injury proneness is very troublesome. So absolutely not is he an untouchable. So as far as just kind of generally my team plan, and we talked about the Pistons, who are kind of the opposite of what I'm about to say, but I am a big believer in just practicing patience. You need to kind of see what you have first, right? If you think about it, an analogy or a metaphor, it's kind of like you can't just run to the grocery store and just start buying stuff without checking what you already have in the cupboards, right? And so I'm at that stage still where I'm looking around at what's in the fridge and what's in the pantry before I just go off and just start buying stuff, because those groceries cost money, right? And I might end up with duplicate things and all these other metaphors that you could use. But the idea is I like to take a little time and let things settle in. You can see we have a few different goals, and we're going to be going through the rest of these demands here momentarily. But we have a few different requests and different conversations I've had, which of course comes over from the MyGM engine. And the first of which is that our coach wants to have veterans on this roster. We have two in his eyes. He wants a third one. And so, okay, that's not a big deal. I can certainly do that. And I think one of the reasons I think that I actually like that plan is when I look at the coaching staff here, we have a couple of assistant coaches who have this badge you can see there. It's a cane. And if I scroll down and look at what that cane badge is, it's a rejuvenator. It gets great contributions from older players who seem to turn back the clock. And so that actually fits pretty well. I can see why the coach says, hey, let's go in and get some veteran players. By the way, if you look at his badge, tactician, players absorb knowledge, basketball IQ is increased in the fourth quarter. We already saw that in that first game. We had a really nice run and comeback there in the fourth, still came up short. But I like this. And I know you're probably, well, who wants old players, right? Who wants these guys who are old and this sort of thing? But let me tell you something about how you can use that to your advantage. You need to think about player acquisition and team building like you think about the stock market. If you're always buying the hottest commodity, you are overpaying every single time, and the odds of you turning that into a massive profit are far, far lower than if you're buying low in the market and letting it grow. Now, what's high? What's an expensive stock in the NBA market? It's young, talented players. And of course everyone wants that. It's like the Tesla and Apple and Amazon stock, right? Everyone wants it, but it's expensive and everyone's fighting for it. And unlike most stock, I mean there's a limited quantity. It's a finite amount. There are only so many Anthony Edwards in the league, right? And so if you're all fighting over this, you're putting yourself at a huge disadvantage because most teams, including you, aren't going to get Anthony Edwards, for example, right? So instead, you need to look at ways to take advantage of the market. And one of the ways you can do that is with older players. So when you have coaches like this, who this can fit into, this is a really, really nice way of buying low, which in the NBA sense is old players who nobody wants, right? It's kind of like the Moneyball approach the Oakland A's were taking way back in the day with the big Moneyball movement. But taking older players that nobody wants, and you're finding value there, right? You're buying low. Now, are these guys going to turn into superstars? No. But it's a way that you can take advantage of the market, by the way, probably far cheaper, and build a team around with just a different way of going about it. This is especially important if you're in an online league, of course, where everyone's fighting over the young talent. You can find little loopholes like that that could be super helpful for you. So anyway, just kind of talking about, again, like that patient plan I talked about when we looked at picking up veterans. One of the guys I'm actually thinking about, and you guys probably are going to laugh at this, but one guy I'm actually considering picking up is Jamal Crawford. He's 40 years old. But that's actually probably the biggest reason why I want him. So 40 years old, he's a shooting guard. But guess who he would be a really, really great mentor for that I technically don't really have a mentor for yet? And that's Anthony Edwards, right? The mentor system, two of the biggest influencers in this system is the gap between player age, so 40 and 19, and whether or not they play the same position, and Jamal Crawford does. Jamal Crawford also has a couple of nice traits that he could actually work and start developing. I should say badges. I keep saying traits like Madden, but he has some badges that would really coincide nicely with Anthony Edwards. So Jamal Crawford, believe it or not, is a guy I'm considering adding on. You could think of him. He might actually play. He's a 75. He's not bad. But to me, he's kind of a coach wearing a jersey. Is why we would pick this guy up. And so he's a guy I'm actually considering to kind of fulfill that last veteran player. They want us to trade James Johnson. That shouldn't be a huge deal. And this is an interesting thing because, again, our GM, or I should say our governor, the owner, wants us to win 41 games. As I mentioned, this team won 19 games last year. Now, it was a shortened season, but, I mean, we were bad, right? We talked about the Western Conference, and we were right towards the bottom, 19 and 45. And so to ask us to win 41 games, that's a lot. You would say, well, it's more than double. Well, not really. Again, they didn't play a full season last year, so pretty close, though. And so it's a big ask, though. I mean, we're talking about percentages. We're talking about going from roughly 30% up to 50% wins. I mean, that's a massive increase. That's almost double, right? So that's a huge increase. And they want us to add veteran players. So those two things could go together well because, of course, veteran players is going to help us win now more. And truthfully, when we talk about building for the future, it's a bit of a challenge with this team. And I'll show you why. So where am I going here? Trying to find the screen. Oh, here, future draft pick. So if we look here, you'll see 2022, but notice if you don't see 2021, at least for the Timberwolves, and here's why. I've hit triangle. It's because the Timberwolves own this pick. Now, just really quick to give you an understanding, in case you're not sure what these protected picks work, it works like this. The Timberwolves traded a first-round pick to Golden State with the condition that if it ends up being a top 3 pick, so say we lose enough games, we end up in the lottery, and we end up with a top 3 pick, it is Golden State's pick unless it is one of those top 3 picks. If it is the top 3 pick, it comes back to us. We get our first round pick back. So luckily, if it is a top 3 pick, we would have a really nice first round pick for 2021. However, if it's anything else, 4 through 30, it's going to remain with Golden State. Now, this protection backup directly ties into this top 3 protected pick. If we get this pick back, let's just say we finish second, right? We get the second pick in the lottery. We're going to get this pick back. Well, we still owe Golden State a first round pick. So this is why we can't trade this pick or anything else, because it's protected. It's a protected backup pick, meaning if we get this back, we still owe them, and we can't owe them later on. We can't be taking out loans against ourselves. We would be paying it back right away. And this one's unprotected, right? So even if it was the first overall, they would get it. So again, that's just how those work. So we talk about, bringing in some veteran players. It might not be the worst thing for this team because we just don't know what we're going to be doing here. And truthfully, the ideal situation here would be to be the best team in the NBA so that we get the 30th pick or so. And we give that to Golden State instead of like the 5th pick or the 8th pick or something that would still be a really valuable player. So again, just something we're kind of thinking about here as we move through this. Let's see. You'll also notice on the screen we didn't have a second round pick. So, I mean, technically, as of this moment, we have no draft picks next year. So, again, just something to keep in mind. And if you have comments or suggestions on that, definitely let me know. There were a couple of team stats I wanted to take a look at. So when we're talking about potential like slider changes or anything like that, I will just cut to the chase and say that everything looked really good here. It's a very small sample size, but I like looking even just through one game because it really kind of shows you how does a play game look versus a bunch of simulated games. And I can tell you right now, everything was right in kind of in line. There was nothing crazy that stood out other than maybe 2 things. And of those 2 things, I think one of the big things here was the defensive rebounds. I'm sorry, it was just rebounds per game, right? So if we scroll this way, you can see we were dead last rebounds per game. Now, some of that's just our team makeup. We're just not a very big team. We don't grab a lot of rebounds. And at the same time, could that be a slider thing? Potentially. I'm keeping an eye on that, but it's a very small sample size. Obviously, that's one thing that stood out. The other one is just the turnovers per game. Check out who the lowest 2 teams are. Timberwolves versus Suns. That, to me, is a huge indicator that maybe just we're seeing a little bit too much of clean basketball, I guess. We need to maybe see some sloppier basketball where there's some more turnovers happening. So definitely keeping an eye on that. And I think if I had to make a change right now, it would probably be something along those lines, pass accuracy or steals, something like that. So again, keeping an eye on that. But overall, things looked really good. Speaking of, we looked at this box score from the previous game. And if we talk about more things that kind of stood out and just kind of how this all looks, I mean, we lost the game by 7 points. And it was a game where we shot 47% from the 3-point line. We made 14 3-pointers. And they say certain teams live and die by the 3. But what the hell do you say about this team? We made a ton of 3-pointers and we still lost. So what happens when we're not making 3-pointers at this clip? Does this mean we're just, to me, this says we're not a very good team potentially at all. I mean, we had a kind of a miraculous 3-point output this week, and we still lost. We did not get to the free throw line. And again, some of that's because we're shooting lots of threes and so on. But we did not get to the line, and when we did, we weren't very good. So that was a big thing. And of course, we saw the rebounds earlier, that 54-40 advantage for the Suns in total rebounds. I mean, you look at the offensive versus look at the offensive rebounds. Even it's almost double, right? If you look at 11 to 6, you're thinking, oh, that's only 5, but you got to look at percentages. That's almost double. That's a lot. That's 5 more possessions that they got. And so, not to mention all the ones that they're rejecting from us here with the defensive rebounds. So, again, it was nice to see the low turnovers, but overall, this is a game that kind of worried me, honestly. It was a home game, and one that I wasn't really thrilled to see the results with for how well we shot from the 3-point line. So, one last little suggestion, then we're going to get into some of these tasks. So, the one suggestion I have is when you're looking at the G League, right? The G League, I can tell you right now, you can get to it a couple different ways. You can look at player stats, and it's going to show you all the different rosters and so on. And as you go through it, I think it's almost all fictional players, right? And what's crazy though is when you look at any of these players, and by the way, you can actually sort them a lot easier just as free agents because they are technically free agents. If you're not sure how the NBA, the G League works compared to say like minor league baseball, the nutshell version is that the league what's the word I want to use here? Like the league, these guys play for the league, right? They don't play for any particular team yet, and so they are member. I think they even have their own union now. Like they're actually part of the league, but they're not affiliated with the team. Most of them, they can still even be drafted later on, and so it's the developmental league, right? Yes, they go play for certain teams that are affiliated with the NBA teams, but they're not directly tied. At least the guys who are just simply signed as G League players, right? So that's the difference there. Is they play for the league, and the NBA they play for the major league affiliate in baseball. Is kind of the difference. But anyway, one of the things you'll see with these guys is if I just scroll over and I look at potentials, you're going to see a ton of really, really high potential guys that are fictional. They're guys in the G League. If I can make one recommendation, and there's a few different ways you could do this, I would recommend going in and editing these players, bringing down those potentials, or else you're going to probably have a league that's flooded with G League players who are kind of running the gamut, running the gauntlet. It's just kind of throughout the league, just overtaking everything. It's going to take you a little bit of time, but it's time well spent. I mentioned I did this to my draft class. I went through and edited some of the player looks. There's a previous video I went through and talked about that with on this channel. But that only took me maybe 40 minutes to do the whole draft class. It didn't take long. You don't have to do every single player. And you could really do a similar thing here. If there's certain player looks and stuff that don't really match up or whatever, you could go through and adjust those. But I would certainly recommend adjusting the potential. And there's a few different places you can do that. I'm not going to go through that on this video here. But if you just go into the player editor, you can kind of dive around there and take a look. That's something I still need to do myself. And again, just something I would recommend. So let's see here. I wanted to go through some of the tasks, right? Let's go through these really quick. So first off, we have up here this section here. I guess we can just jump in and talk to the head coach. So he's got a big game against the Nets. Okay. It's funny because I kind of let the coach do his own thing anyway, so I'm not quite sure what he needs me to do, but we're going to make him happy and just let him rebuild his rotation. That's really all I'm setting right now for now. I mean, I'll take a closer look before I actually play this game, but just to kind of satisfy this. Cool. He's pumped. We're meeting on an empty bus. Cool. All right. So that one's taken care of. So we still have some pending transactions here, and let's go back and talk to the coach again. Feels like the team isn't gelling well. Sorry. We really need to improve the team chemistry. Yeah, I'm cool with that. Yeah. I think that's important in any industry. So that's good. Fan interest is low. We need to excite them. Yeah, I agree. I wish there was just kind of like a I agree. This like there's like a no, a maybe, and then like a I promise. So anyway, we did that. We do have a lot. Yes, I agree. We have a lot of strong forwards. I haven't shown you the roster makeup, but there's like 8 of them or something on this team. It's ridiculous. Okay, that makes sense. Let's see what else we got here. From we got a few of them. So he wants us to get rid of some of the get rid of at least 2 small forwards by the trade deadline. That works. Improve fan interest. Okay, and don't let the chemistry drop. So we got 3 of those things. Let's go talk to our scout, who we already have out. We should aim to be one of the top 15 teams. Oh, interesting. So he thinks we're a pretty decent team. I'm going to make no promises because I don't know. I really don't know the direction we're going. I don't know the direction that my guy's shirt was going in that either. That was a hell of a bright green shirt my guy was wearing. So when you create your GM, they don't give you a ton of options of how they look or anything like that. So it's not quite the same editing suite that you get for the players. So we got one more task here. So this is with the Gov here, the owner, meeting in the parking lot. It sounds like some dirty business. And apparently there's a huge banana leaf plant here in front of us. I just checked the prices we're selling in the stadium and they're way too low. Do me a favor and increase it. Yeah, I mean, he's my boss. Sure, consider it done. That was a very covert meeting there. We were hidden behind a banana leaf tree, whatever you want to call that thing. That was in a parking lot. That was really, really important meeting, I guess. I wonder if I should be scared or nervous. That was kind of like a mobster meeting. That was a very, very strange one. So, but anyway, like I said before, I am still trying to decide on my exact pacing with this. Am I going to be playing as many games as possible? Am I going to come up with some sort of sim situation? That article I mentioned, I wrote on Sim Sports Gaming, talks about that very thing. I kind of talk about just some different sim styles and whatnot that you could do here, because this game as of now does not carry over. I still think that's a feature we're going to see next year, but this does not carry over, and there's a hell of a lot of games, right? And so you have to kind of decide, well, do you want to do like the slow burn and just get through maybe 1 season, maybe 2, or do you want to get through 10 seasons where you're simming a whole bunch? And again, that's completely up to you and how you'd want to do that. So as for me, like I said, I know I'm going to be doing more of these. I'm not going to be doing little highlights for each game, but I'll probably be doing some sort of like weekly highlight, and then checking in kind of like, each week or certainly each month on the game calendar here. So like, for instance, I might do a like weekly episode like this, or bi-weekly episode where each time I recap a month. We're not going to just recap one day. We just did this one because it was just kind of the more of like an introduction to the series here, trying to keep these around a half hour or so, which is what we're doing here. So, but again, if you do have requests, definitely let me know. I think the more we can share and discuss this mode or any of these franchise modes, the better. And as I mentioned before, I'm on Twitter at MikeLowe47, or you can even ask just questions here. But if you like this video, if you found it interesting, give it a like, give us a subscribe. I would super appreciate that because it keeps me motivated, and I think it's fun just to hear from other people out there who are playing this, because I learn a hell of a lot from you all as well, reading through the comments and questions and suggestions. So I want to thank you for watching this. Again, be looking for episode 2 soon. And yeah, this was episode 1 of our Timberwolves MyNBA franchise here on PlayStation 5 Next Gen. I appreciate you guys watching it, and I will talk to you next time.